Welcome to Tokyo. As you saw with the exchange rates, it is now nearing 152 yen equals $1. It's a rate that I have not seen since last year, but it's also something that is reminiscent to the first month that I came to Japan in 1998 when it got to about 148 to the dollar. It's just kind of surreal to me to see how weak that the yen is. And in this episode, I'm going to kind of explain to you how long this might last, because I know a lot of you are going to be traveling to Japan and you want to have the best rate possible because it makes Japan, basically on sale. Behind me, just about 2-3 kilometers in that direction, is the Bank of Japan. And they are grappling with a lot of stuff right now. It's not easy to do monetary policy based on several decades, at least 4 decades of 3 decades of like deflation and really bad economy situation. And for the very longest time, it was pretty much pegged at 100 yen equals a dollar. You could probably be comfortable saying that. Nowadays, it's not. I have here a $100 bill. This was actually gifted to me from somebody. They said, here's a super chat. And I was very thankful because this is actually used to be worth one of these, which is 10,000 yen. But now this is worth 15,000 yen. And that's pretty crazy to me. So thank you for the dollars. It's actually worth a lot more. I want to show you right now some graphs here. Now, this all has to do pretty much, there's always a bunch of factors that go into currency rates and why things are the way that they are. I have a bachelor's degree in economics. That does not make me an economist, first of all. So sometimes economists will chime in and correct me, which is good. You do that in the comments below. So if you take a look at the interest rates, and this is important, in the United States, you can see over the course of the last few years, the interest rates have been climbing, especially around 2022. And we know that inflation was pretty much out of control in the United States. It felt like, something that you could afford one day. A week later, the prices had gone up, was it like 8% or something? It felt like a really high increase. And that's just the inflation rates, and it was out of control for a very long time. And the way that they try to control that is by increasing interest rates. And you can see here the interest rate hikes by the Fed from about a year ago, from about the spring of 2022. It looks like it was hiked from 0%, and it kept going up in increments. It's increments that people could swallow, and then you could see around 4%, it started to lean out as they're getting closer to the 5% mark, and now we're at 5.25 or to 5.5% interest rate, which means that if you save some money, you're going to get 5% or 5.25% interest rates on your savings, which is good, but it also makes everything else more expensive, like, credit card debt and things like this. Now let's take a look at Japan's interest rates here, and this is kind of the problem, right? This is where the story is told. Japan's interest rates, this is historically, all right? This is going back to the 1980s, and you can see they were quite high in the 80s. In the bubble era, the interest rates were, between 20 and 10%. It was really high. And then you saw what I'm talking about, the lost decade. When I came to Japan, the interest rates are at, believe it or not, 5%, which is really good. And then after, I guess around 2003, you can see it just kept on sinking and sinking until we got to about the financial crisis in 2008. The interest rates were at 0. And for the longest time, it's been pretty much at 0. You can't get any interest if you put money in a savings account in Japan, which is like, why would anybody save money in Japan? It doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface, right? But here's the thing. Japan was, and thank you, Champagne Sumo is here. That Asahi beer will be very useful, because as I make less money in yen, beer becomes more important to try to forget about it. All right, well, thank you, I appreciate that. So basically, the yen now is under pressure, at least the Bank of Japan, to raise interest rates, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep interest rates low. Now, recently, I will not tell you to invest in gold. I think that's sort of ridiculous, but you do what you want with your money. Just recently, as recent as yesterday, banks started to increase the interest rate on their own without the Bank of Japan telling them to do that. The interest rates 2 days ago were at 0.002%. Like, that's how much money you would make. And the reason why is because Japan had deflation for a very long time, meaning like the money that you earn today in a year would be worth less. So putting in the bank and keeping it at 0% meant that you weren't losing anything. You were keeping it the same. Whereas if you just held onto the cash, you were losing value in it based on deflation, right? So now the interest rate has gone up 100% or something like this, 100 times, from 0.002% to 0.2%. But that's still pretty much zeros. It's like really, really small. But it is a move in the right direction, right? And NHK was all over this today. In their broadcast, they're talking about the interest rates hikes. But what was interesting about this broadcast was that they interviewed a lot of people on the streets, and a lot of them really didn't feel this interest rate hike. It's just a small step into a direction that's almost forcing the Bank of Japan's hand, I think. Basically, if the yen keeps getting weaker for us in Japan, we have to pay a lot more for ingredients and things that we need to make buildings, to cook, to give you the food and the services you need as tourists. So although you're getting a really great exchange rate, the prices in Japan are starting to skyrocket. And just, I guess in the last 6 months, we've started to feel it, which is later than in the United States. There was an article in the Nikkei Asia which highlighted it, and this headline comes from July of this year. Japan overtakes US in inflation, but wage growth lags, which is so true. Hey, that Von Chick is here, and Brandania, how you guys doing? How I invest in snacks. Actually, that's probably not a bad idea. You can invest in a crate of snacks in case the big one ever occurs, which I have a stash of stuff in the basement. Never know. So this is the biggest issue that's happening in Japan. Before I go into what the situation is like here in Japan for us living here with this, let me talk about you as a tourist coming here to Japan. And I think those that came here in November of 2022 got the best of both worlds. The inflation really hadn't started back then, so hotel prices and food and all this other stuff was relatively inexpensive. You were getting the older prices of the deflationary Japan and the exchange rate, which was just off the charts at 150 yen to the dollar, about 149, 150 at that time. So those that came last year were like super rich. Even though the exchange rate is 152 to the dollar almost, I think it might get there. It's at 151.7. The prices have risen tremendously over the last year. Tremendously, I mean, like, it feels like 10 to 20% on a lot of items. And if you look at hotel prices, they're starting to go up. Ticket prices to entry is going up because energy costs are going up. Everything is going up because Japan relies a great deal on importing things that they need to keep this country running. And if the yen is this weak, of course it costs that much to buy the stuff. It costs them, I don't know, like 30 to 40% more to buy certain things, and even more depending on the commodity that they're buying. So that's getting passed on to us, of course. For you as a tourist, though, you're probably not going to feel it so much because the exchange rate, the inflation is still at, the exchange rate's like 40% higher than it was before, and inflation has been about, I don't know, like 8 to 10%. So you're still getting a really good deal. It's just about 8 to 10% more than last year, let's just say. I don't know how long this is going to last, but it's still really good. So when you get a JR Rail Pass where the price has gone up by 70%, it's still a really good deal because number one, the pass was undervalued for a very long time. I think I might even have the graph of that because this is a pretty good indicator. The price of the pass increased this past month, October 1st. And the yen is just weaker, but also the price hadn't risen in decades, it feels like. So it was due for a price increase anyways. I don't think the price really ultimately changed that much. based on the fact that they should have risen the prices more gradually over the years. But here we go, and I don't think they're going to raise the prices again for a very long time. Of course, they're taking advantage of the fact that the dollar is much, much stronger now versus the yen, and that most tourists, not everybody, is doing quite well that visit, especially from the West, quite well comparably. So there's that. And I always thought that that Real Pass was not fair because I didn't get one. I can't get one. So that was sort of a sour issue to me. Common Writers here. Hi, John. Now 1 Singapore dollar more or less equals 100 yen. Interesting. Okay. And Michael says, thank you for that. Michael Sassano, I was just wondering about how Japan residents are dealing with the yen rate. Perfect timing to discuss. Mahalo. Thank you, Michael. Always. It's great to see you here. Should you buy yen? Yes, buy yen. If you can, I'm gonna say buy yen. If you can just put down, I don't know, $100,000, you'll get 150,000 yen. Do I think that the Bank of Japan is going to have to start to react? I think that they will. Inflation is now at a pretty decent level, and Japan, unlike the United States, Japan wanted inflation, all right? They hadn't seen inflation at all in decades. Again, deflation. I think you can see here, let me bring up a chart here to illustrate this. I think I have it right here. Oh, these are the exchange rates. Oh, here's the exchange rates right now, just to illustrate this before I pull up the other chart. I just have to bring it into the software. So this chart shows you just how much since the summer the yen has been going up. And that is really crazy, isn't it? I mean, I expected the yen to go up, but I didn't expect it to go up like this, right? I didn't expect it to go up, to keep going up. I thought they would hit a wall. All right, I can't find the chart. I think it's, I can't find the chart. I think it's lost in the software somewhere. All right, let me get out of this. Yeah, so the inflation rate for Japan has been going up higher than the U.S. right now. So we're at a pretty comfortable point. But still, the Bank of Japan refuses stubbornly to raise the rates. And this is causing inflation to just keep going up and no one buying yen. When they don't raise the interest rates and the rest of the world raises the interest rates, the value of the yen goes down. There are lots of other factors involved in this. It's not just the interest rates, but a great deal of it is the interest rates. So if Japan were to become normalized like the rest of the countries and raise the interest rates, the yen's value would strengthen because it is still quite a safe currency. But with the interest rates still at like zero, it just makes the yen look really weak, and the dollar, it makes it really, really strong. Despite that probably all the world currencies are much weaker, the yen is just much, much weaker right now. Will it change? I think it will. It can never stay like this. And I remember when it got up to 125, after, it was 149, 48 in July, August, September of 1998 when I first came here. So I had dollars then. I was really rich before my first paychecks were coming in. Then I was really not rich. But we've seen that the yen got down down to like 78 yen to the dollar. And during the bubble era, it was quite powerful too. So the market's always going to fluctuate, and the U.S. economy is always going to go up and down, just like the Japanese economy will always kind of stay the same. And that's what makes the Japanese yen such a safe haven currency, because there is a very stable political structure here. The same political party has been ruling Japan, modern Japan, for pretty much most of that time. After the tsunami and earthquake, the other party, I believe, was in power. And then the Liberal Democratic Party came back into power. That's Abe-san, that's Kishida right now. And, I don't think they're going to lose grip on power for a long time. So having this stable government and stable policy that's very predictable makes Japan a very safe place to put your money, thus a safe investment. When the markets look like a mess and there's a lot of risk in the world, people invest in the Japanese yen, and the yen gets stronger because it has that reputation. of very conservative policies. This isn't the Wild West for money. But right now, Japan is the risk because it's the outlier that is not raising interest rates. So I think that they're going to have to eventually, but I think they're very stubborn not to do it, and maybe for good reason. If you raise the interest rates, inflation will go away, and Japan wants inflation. Again, the biggest issue now, Michael, I'm going to go back down to how the Japanese feel about this. Inflation has been going up for about a year, but it's really hit hard in the last 6 months in particular. You can tell with the price of milk. I used to pay 280 yen for, first of all, they decreased 1 liter of milk to 900 milliliters of milk. So you get 100 milliliters less. The carton looks almost the same. Then they raised the price starting around 8 months ago. And now that 280 yen carton of milk, I like the Jersey milk. So I don't know, it's just, maybe New Jersey, I don't know. Just it tastes a little bit better. That 280 yen milk is now 400 yen, all right? That's a massive increase in the amount. It's like 390 yen plus 8% sales tax, I think, for food. So it ends up being over 400 yen for what used to be 280 yen plus tax. It was still under, I think it was still very close to 300 yen. So it's over 100 yen price increase in less than a year. And you feel that because that's just one indicator. Everything else has gone up in price. The biggest problem is that wages have not gone up much at all. You're starting to see some companies, Uniqlo was one of the first ones that said they're going to be giving staff wage increases. Uniqlo can afford to do that. Companies that have businesses that are that have businesses based outside of Japan are making dollars. So they're doing an amazing job. Sony is making a killing because they sell most of their stuff outside of Japan, and they bring that money back to Japan. Well, most of it. I don't know how much they keep unpatriated, is that the word, in the United States, but they're making dollars. So companies like that, tech companies, Sony, Panasonic, a lot of other companies that have, Toyota, for example, making a lot of money in the US market, they're doing quite well. They have no excuse not to raise, and Uniqlo, because Uniqlo is represented in the United States as well as in Europe, they're doing very well. They can afford to pay their workers more. Japanese corporations, on the other hand, that are domestic, are having a hard time because they have to pass that cost to the consumer, and the consumer doesn't have a lot of money because no one's raising the wages. It's like a, chicken and egg type of thing. So so one of the reasons we saw the price of the Japan Rail, this is my opinion here. One of the reasons I think we saw the Japan Rail prices increase in October, and we didn't see domestic prices. So if you go to the ticket machine, you can still get a Shinkansen ticket for the same price as a year ago. One of the reasons why is because Japan Rail and some of the other companies have not raised the wages, so they would not be able to afford those wages, even though Japan Rail has to pay more for the maintenance and the upkeep of their trains. Based on the things that they import, they still have not raised the wages for the employees yet. So once they do that and we start to see companies raise the wages, you're going to see ticket prices and everything start to increase even more. So we're not there yet, but I'm starting to feel that wages are about to go up in Japan. And that's maybe a good thing, because for the longest time, comparably to the United States, Japanese make less than Americans. It used to be way different in the bubble era, of course, but over the last couple of decades, the medium income of Japanese is much lower than that in the United States. The ceiling is very high in the US. There's so much to love about the US economy. The sky's the limit. In Japan, CEOs make a fraction of what CEOs in the United States would make. I mean, Carlos Ghosn, who is the CEO of Nissan, did so much to build up that company's stock. And this is maybe arguable. I'm sure somebody's going to have another opinion on it. He did so much. His value to Nissan was exorbitant. But he never got a wage that was comparable to the West for the work that he did. And you can understand, the frustration to being a CEO in Japan, there's not as much incentive to push as hard as in other countries. But that's just a different system, not a financial reason anyways. There's always a pride reason, and there's always a team reason, and that's why I think Japanese workers take it on the chin here, because everybody else is not getting a bonus, for example. I remember after the 2008 financial crisis, I had a lot of, I was still teaching English a little bit, mostly to corporations. It's a lot more money in that. And the people who were, that I was teaching weren't getting any bonuses that year. And they didn't for a very long time. Some companies still don't give bonuses. And a lot of their salary is based on bonuses, meaning they would get like sanju, like 300,000 to 350,000 yen a month, which is sort of an average salary. But if you look at the exchange rate and the fact that it has stayed that for decades, that shows you like, what is that? That'd be the equivalent to like $3,000, but now it's like the equivalent of, I don't know, like $2,000, can you imagine? So if you're an English teacher coming to Japan and you're making the same wage as you made 20 years ago, and this is the case. When I came here 25 years ago, I was making, my starting wage was 250,000 yen. That's what English teachers got. That was pretty standard. And that was equivalent to like $2,500 a month, which is pretty reasonable for a teacher back then. Now, if you make that, you're making not a lot of money. You're doing it more for the experience because the exchange rate is so bad and the cost of everything is so good. I don't think Eikaiwa or English schools have raised the price or the wages. You guys can chime in on the comments below. But if you're still making like 300,000 yen or 250,000 yen a month, that is not a lot to save compared to the cost of living that has going to skyrocket over the next 365 days. I really see inflation going up, and the only way that the Bank of Japan can control the inflation, because wages are not going up fast enough at all, is to hike the rates, the interest rates, and then people start to save the money. There's a lot of economics behind all of this. Again, I have a degree in economics, but that does not make me an economist. It makes me extremely interested in the way that the country works and the prices in which you pay when you come to visit the country. David Kimura, thank you. And Jeff is not, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Again, I make yen ultimately, but it's nice to see dollars. Let's be honest here, I'll take some questions here, especially English teachers. I see the live chat in front of me. It is quite bright, so I apologize for squinting at you. Has anybody seen the changes from Nova GABA, the blackest of companies? That comes from a comment. I worked at GABA. There are a lot of good people at these companies. I just found out that Nova bought GABA, which is weird, but yeah, I don't know. If someone wants to chime in who's teaching English about the wage rates, that would be really interesting. I am out of that industry, thankfully. I have not taught English in a very long time, so I really don't know what the rates are. Kelvin writes in here, the other way around. Could very well be. If I lived in Japan, I would have to eat like a sumo wrestler because of the small portions. Christian, the portions might be getting a little smaller. I doubt that though. But yeah, the portions here in Japan are much, much smaller. But all right, let me put it to you like this. When it comes to that, you don't have to tip. So if the price is just a little bit more, it's probably gonna be okay, but you don't have to tip, so you don't have to add in an extra 15 to 20%, and you probably would do that because the service is so darn good, all right? You don't have to put in the extra money because tipping is sort of somewhat insulting to Japanese, but I'll make an episode on that because even that's starting to change here, believe it or not, which is crazy. KJ, thank you. Thanks for being here. And Logan Roy, thank you, Logan. Wow, there you go. The sales tax for food and supermarkets and takeout food It's still 8%, I believe. I don't think they've rounded that up, have they? But the tax for sales in Japan is now 10%. They increased that from 5%. And then when I came to Japan just a few years before that, I think it was 95, they raised it from 3% to 5%. And before that, they didn't have a sales tax at all in Japan, if I remember correctly. But now sales tax is 10%, and they really don't have a choice. Japanese economy here is not good, guys. It's still really strong. It's just not good because a lot of the declining population makes it really hard. But Japan has always been pretty stable. It's still a stable political place, and it's a stable monetary place, and the services are really good. You know, you're not going to get cheated, I guess. The economy's not going to crash anytime soon, but the economy's not good, and Japanese are really good at taking it. You know, they're getting hit. But when the times are good, I talk with a lot of the old timers from who were here in the 1980s during the bubble era, and they told me about the excessive waste and how bad Japanese culture was in the 1980s. Is they had so much money and could buy so many things from abroad that it spoiled the country to its core, and that was not a good thing. And a lot of people took those lessons, and even today there's some old timers that still believe that, you know, they've earned their rights to spend like they did in the 1980s. It's 40 years ago. So not until that generation leaves, I think we'll have a little bit more responsibility. The younger generation, though, is very responsible, I think, with that. And the older generation that came up through World War II is very responsible as well. And there's this my generation, so to speak, maybe we lived in a little bit of too excess. And you can see that, but the economy here is not good. It hasn't been good for a very long time, but it's been stable, and that's good. I saw here somebody commented about the prices for English teachers here. GABA, which is a man-to-man or private lesson at Kaiwa where I used to work. So I was making 250 to 300,000 yen per month at Ion, which is one of the big Eikaiwa companies, and that rate it depended on the bonuses, because if you did a good job, you could receive like a 30 to 50,000 yen bonus, or sometimes even more, depending on how busy you were. So your rate was okay, and I believe that they subsidized your rent or paid for that. So, you know, living costs are not too bad. GABA was not a great deal. You're in Itaku, which is a contracted worker, a freelance worker. You don't get any benefits. They don't help you with your taxes, nothing like this. No subsidizing of your living costs, but you're free to do other stuff, or free not to work at all. You're free to make your own schedule. They paid, when I got there, it was 1,400 yen per lesson, which was a 40-minute lesson. Or it was 40 minutes, right? And then and I'm gonna take credit for this, all right? I was interviewed by Newsweek after Nova fell in 2008, I believe it was. I was the face of GABA for a little bit. I was in all of their podcasts. We helped to start that up because I was podcasting at the time, video podcasting. This is before YouTube was sort of a thing as well. But I was on iTunes, and I remember I was friends with the marketing guy at the time and came up with video podcasting. I've been doing it before GABA started theirs. But in episode 14, there I was, and I was in their modeling. Whenever they did a campaign, I was the guy who was teaching English with that plastic smile and necktie and jacket. And I got contacted by a reporter freelance reporter. David, I won't tell you his name because he's still around. But he interviewed me and took pictures of me for an article in Ginza. And he was talking more about my own company because I was producing, you know, on video podcasts. I had, I don't know, like 1 million downloads off of iTunes a month, which is pretty significant back then. But he changed the article, and he turned off the recorder, and he said, okay, off the record. He goes, how much do they pay you at GABA? And then I gave him all the information. I was honest. I said, well, we get 1,400 yen per lesson. How do you feel about it? I was like, yeah, of course it's too cheap. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't really negative. And then in the Newsweek article, of course, there's a picture of me, and they took 100 photos of me in different positions. They got one where my eyes are half closed, just like it is now, and I looked angry, and they put the caption, they pay me only 1,400 yen, you know, an hour or something. And it looked like I was really upset. When the Newsweek article came out, I was going to the Narita airport to get on a plane to go back home for Christmas vacation. And I got a phone call from the head of personnel at the time, and they wanted to know what the heck happened, because they were blindsided by this. And it's like, I'm blindsided by it too. I didn't know. I went into the bookstore at Narita airport. I saw the article. Nova was on the front page of it. I did a live stream on this. And I opened it up, and there, sure enough, was a massive photo of me in 2008, squinting into the camera in a suit, saying how miserable my rates are for the money I was making. And this reporter completely screwed the article. This is why the media stinks, all right? You can't trust them. Never trust the media. I should have recorded it too. That if someone brings out a recorder and says, can I record this? You bring it, you take out your recorder too and say, can I record this too? Because you know that they're going to screw you, all right? And he didn't mention anything about the 1 hour that we talked about, and he mentioned everything about the 5 minutes after, when he was cleaning up and he put his recorder away, and he wasn't even taking notes. Real journalist there. Get the story at all costs. He's a big reporter here too, the Japan-US beat. But yeah, that really showed me how little I was making. Now the part where I think that I made an impact. So very quickly after that, this is for all the GABA teachers there, they started this training thing where you could raise your rates. Very instantly, they raised it from 1,400 yen to 1,500 yen. Thank me, that was my fault, or my doing. Then after they raised it, they started to do that like training thing where you could make up to like 2,100 yen if you became this gung-ho GABA instructor and you had a certain amount of hours and whatnot. I thought that was really good, but the fact that they haven't raised it in 13 years since then, this is like 2008. They haven't raised it 13 years since. That shows that, yeah, maybe not the greatest thing to do. They should probably start to raise those rates. But in general, the eikaiwa industry is kind of a mess because you don't need to go into a school anymore. You can just do it with a teacher in the Philippines who speaks pretty good English and practice eikaiwa, which is just conversation, like for 100 or 200 yen. It's like really cheap. So I don't know why you need to go into an eikaiwa. But they had something called Kyufu, like a special government program that subsidized the cost if you went to these overpriced eikaiwa schools. But they honestly, I liked Eon. I think they really did a good job of taking care of the instructors, and they knew that if you were happy, the lessons were good. But GABA, you being in Itaku, it really favored the corporations, and that's, you knew that before you went in there. And I was a negative place. The teachers there that I met were mostly very negative in nature because they saw this as their career. I never saw GABA as my career, but they wanted to start a union. They wanted to do a bunch of things, that like, dude, if you're not happy with your small income, the ceiling for this job is never going to be very high. If you're not happy with it, I guess starting a union is fair, but just leave, start your own school, be your own man, go find another job, go back to school and get a degree. I did it as a stopgap because my company wasn't making a lot of money. I needed some income. So sometimes you got to work at McDonald's in order to pay the bills, and that's what I did. But I stayed there too long, and I bought into the system, and I should have left years before I did. That's my story. But yeah, you can thank me for any raise in GABA's thing. You can thank that article and me for messing up. I did it accidentally. I'll take credit for it though. Kind of cool. It was kind of cool, I'll be honest, it was kind of cool to get your picture in Newsweek as well. It was a big, big picture. I'm immortalized. So teachers get screwed no matter which country the people work in. Teachers, yeah. Maybe Finland, not. But maybe the teachers have more power in Japan, so there's that. I think you might have more power, I don't know. The system, there's a lot of not good teachers here in Japan though. There's a lot of great teachers, and there's a lot of not good teachers that are just institutionalized and just do it. That's what scares me with Leo going to school here. All right, there's a lot of teachers that, you know, they just, you just regurgitate what the teacher tells you. And if the teacher's not good, you're regurgitating really garbage information. And you're not allowed to speak up in the classes. Maybe it's changing a little bit depending on the school. Everything is by school. But if you didn't understand something, you can't raise your hand and ask the teacher, because that shows the teacher that either one, you weren't listening, or two, that the teacher's made a mistake by not explaining it correctly, and the teacher would lose face. So you don't question the teacher ever. So instead, you whisper to the person next to you and ask them, what did the teacher say? And they will tell you, and then you get the information from somebody who probably got it wrong as well. Thus, you need to go to a juku, which is a secondary business, and pay a lot of money to cram in what you were supposed to learn at school. It's not a great system, but it's Japan's system, and I can't criticize it other than saying it's not a great system. Because what do you really learn? You learn how to memorize stuff, but you don't learn how to critically think, and you don't learn any kind of leadership skills. You don't learn about taking an initiative. And that's what scares me about Japanese school, which is maybe why we have a lack of leadership. We feel like we have a lack of leadership in Japan. People don't want the job. It's not respected. How do you expect kids to learn difficult math without asking questions? They memorize from the teacher, and they go after school and they cram from teachers that are paid to do that. That's how they learn. And in the end, they spend more time studying, and they actually learn and remember that. But how do you learn English? How do you learn English if you're just regurgitating, this is a pen, and the class goes, no, he says like this, sorry. This is a pen. This is a pen. Pen. And the class says the same thing. And my name is John. How do you teach English if, you know, you're regurgitating stuff that's wrong? So I don't know. I think critical thinking is good. And, you know, the thing is, I worry about Leo is he speaks both languages here, and he speaks as much Japanese as he speaks English, and he speaks English pretty good. Even in his school where everyone is Japanese, he's speaking English to everybody. He's teaching English to the teachers, which is awesome. But the thing is, when he gets into elementary school or kindergarten, you're penalized for being different. You want to be like everybody else. So bilingual kids that have lived in the US come back to Japan, and they don't want to speak English. And this is the sad thing. They got to take English class, but they don't want to speak English because they don't want to be different than everybody else. So they don't take an initiative, and they don't brag about it, so they dumb themselves down and they forget their English. There's some statistics somebody had told me. I haven't seen it, so I can't say, but someone had showed me, had told me about statistics that show when kids come back from abroad that speak English, they lose their skills because they don't want to be perceived as being better than everybody else in the school. Yeah, that's sad. So I have to consider that when we put Leo through Japanese school. International school costs about $3,000 a month, depending on which one. Everyone is different. That's a lot. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Or maybe we go back to the US for a little. I don't know. I know my friend Greg is in Canada, and his kids are in school in Canada, so if that's a testament. I've got friends that have their kids in school here. Again, every school is different. This is a pencil. Katakana English is so bad. I don't know. All right, that's the situation. Thanks so much for the questions. I'm sorry I ended up talking about this for 30 minutes or so, but schools are free, K to 12, yes. Yeah. In fact, hoikuen, which is the preschool or daycare, is free, is almost free. It depends on how much money you make. Depending if you hit a certain threshold, then it can be free, or you might have to pay a little bit depending on how much you make in terms of your income. So I think that's kind of a cool system. I'm going to move over here because the sun is going behind a building, but really quickly, I can move over here. But yeah, I'm going to end this live stream by thanking everybody for the super chats. That's really kind of you. Where did you ask Leo where he wants to live or stay? Leo's 2.8 years old, so he's not 3 years old yet, so he doesn't really know that. All I know is that he wants to go to his mom's school, which is an all-girls school. So I'm not sure he can get into mom's school. Mom went to an all-girls school, so he's like, I want to go to mom's school. I'm like, really? Okay. It's like, I would want to go there too, but for different reasons. He doesn't want to go to dad's school yet, so we'll see what happens. But I think a lot of it has to do with what he wants, what his interests are. But he's still a kid, and we have to be parents, so sometimes you have to parent. Don't technical high schools exist in Japan for students who want to immediately get a job upon graduations? I believe that they do. I really don't know a lot about that. I believe that they do, though. A lot of it is apprenticeships, though. Japan still has a system of apprenticeships in many industries that goes back to the medieval era, since the Edo period. So that's sort of a good thing, where if you want to become a noodle master, or if you want to open up your own ramen business, you can't go to LinkedIn and look for a job and go to a chain and learn how to make noodles. You have to go to a master ramen chef. You have to beg him to teach you, and to take a job where you're probably not going to get paid much at all, to learn from him on how to make ramen. This still exists. So if you want to learn how to cook in Japan from the best, you have to go in there and become a serve the master. And then it might take a year before he says, okay, now we're going to start to learn. And I think patience is something that maybe a lot of Westerners don't have. If you're watching Tokyo Vice on Netflix right now, which is, I should probably make another episode on that. Amazing series. It reminds me of the time when I first came to Japan in 1998. That era was the time that Jake came to Japan as well. So it was really cool to see that in the background, but an extraordinary person. Jake Adelson, yeah. Very incredible person. Anime portrays high school as being an increasingly serious thing in Japan life. I have an episode coming this month on Japanese school uniforms. You're gonna see a little bit of this in that episode, but you're also gonna see a softening in the way things were 40 to 50 years ago to today. So there's some things that have changed that are really good, and there's some things that stay the same. And one of the things that stay the same is the respect for the teacher. And it's almost military in style, the way that they stand up and bow to the teacher, and they don't talk or say anything. They don't want to be different. And that's, again, why uniforms are 80% of high school kids want uniforms. So I'm losing the sun again from here. This is crazy. The sun's moving fast. You saw it here first. Yeah, the exchange rate is not good for me, but great for you. This was earlier today. It'll probably go up and down, but if it passes 152, I expect really soon them to start to raise the interest rates a little bit more, because the banks today did that on their own. It's a small hike, but it's actually big compared to where the rate was in percentages. So I think we're gonna start to see that happening. Hey, Common Writer's here. What happened to my Japanese friend who grew up in Singapore for the first 15 years of his life, but was forced to go back due to his dad being posted back to Japan? I'm not sure. What was his name? Can look it up for you. Yeah. And if you're just joining me now, this is what happened in the news that just today or yesterday. And this is what sort of triggered me to do this. You're starting to see banks on their own raise interest rates for, this is the yield difference is moved 2 decimal points, which is pretty huge, but it's still not even 1%. For 10-year bonds, right, the yield is 0.2%, but that's still massive comparatively, and it's still below inflation. So you have to scratch your head and wonder, the Fed has to raise the rates. I mean, they have to. Inflation is pretty rough right now for Japanese, so I mean, I don't know, how much longer can you let the leash go on the kite before the kite just rips away? This is a good analysis. Japan right now is just letting the string go on the kite, and the inflation's going higher and higher, but the winds are stronger the higher you go. So how long is it going to be? Either the kite is just going to snap and fly away and you don't have control of it anymore, or they're going to start to bring the kite in by raising the interest rates. And we're going to see that probably in the next month. I think before the end of the year. And if not, we're going to see that before the end of April next year, something's going to change. And, you know, I'm not an economist, but I have a degree in economics, and I'm deeply interested in this. And this will not be the last one of these talks that we have. Have you met Corey May in your Hawaii Photo Luke Hawaii? I did meet Luke, Photo Luke Hawaii, and Austin and Cheryl, and they're amazing people, and I will always be looking forward to seeing them again. Hey guys, aloha. Raise interest rates, but no wage increase. Yeah, that's what we're at right now, so it hurts. Happy Diwali to everybody in India, by the way. I know that it's happening because every time Diwali hits, we get an increase on the fireworks video, which has 4.1 million views of Indians commenting about how bad fireworks are for the environment, and also Indians saying Happy Diwali. So Happy Diwali, thank you. I don't feel that here in Japan, but I feel it from your comments, so I really appreciate that. And thanks for subscribing to the new channel. The postcard is out, and you can get that right now. This is the postcard. This is the world's oldest hotel. And if you want to support the channel, you can join our postcard club on Patreon. I will send this out to you immediately. This is the fall colors at the world's oldest hotel. At this very spot, they started well, yeah, I think you can see it up on the right. The very spot where they started the hotel business in the year 705 AD. This is the spot. So I thought this is a great postcard for fall. And if you haven't already, this video just passed 100,000 views. It is a really interesting take on one of the oldest, in fact, the hardest core samurai festival still to date, Japanese samurai racing. Again, like such a long history to it. And if you missed this one, please check this one out. This one is an incredible story. I'm going to change the thumbnail and the title a little bit, but it's about she was 14 years old at the time. She's 92 now. And she was in just a few kilometers away from the blast, survived the atomic bomb, and 72 hours later, she was the conductor on a train, which the company Hiroden got back online in 3 days. Is crazy fast. And it's still, this is something that, like, when you hear the story, you're like, how did they do this? And there's just something in the core of Japan, Japanese in particular, working for Hiroden, a pride that they had in their company that it was important to get it back online following that you know, the atomic bomb in Japan. They did something like this, and it's a story that not a lot of people know about. So I would love it if you guys watch that. It seems to, I interviewed her and talked to her about her story. She showed me old pictures. I think you're gonna learn a lot about Hiroshima and Japan and the war with this video. And I talked just about her incident, her situation, and I don't get into the politics of what's happening around, just this one city and this one particular circumstance. And it inspired me. It's hard to find an inspirational story in the time of war. And those are the type of stories that you make movies from, all right? And this is one of those, I think. Yeah. It's sad, but she's still alive, and she tells a story, and it was so important for me to cover this. So I hope you guys take the time to watch it and leave me a comment. We've been feeling the interest, the rate increases in Canada. They've gone up quite a bit. All right, I'm not an economist, but I do have a degree in economics, and I'm deeply interested. I see I don't want to get into the politics of Canada, but I don't know how Canadians can keep electing Trudeau. I said it. I don't know how the Conservative Party does not come back. I don't know how he stays in power. I guess it's just a name recognition. I don't know what he does. Almost everybody they talk to in Canada says that they're really doing bad right now. They can't, something with housing, the cost of everything is up, and it looks like it can be somewhat avoided, right? I don't know, but I just don't know how he can still be in office. That's because Canada doesn't have a term limit, unlike the US. I don't think he's doing that good of a job where he needs to be in office, or that's saying that the other party is that bad. I don't know. It's going to be interesting in the US election. I don't have a bone to pick with any candidate. I'm not picking any sides for the US election. I live in Japan. I'm going to keep it at that. I have my personal opinions. Never air them out publicly. No one needs to know what you're thinking politically. It's not important. All right. I believe Canada does, doesn't it? Canada, I guess it doesn't. Yeah, the other guy's worse, and that's a bad situation for any country. Japan is not an exclusion, it's not different because we have the same thing. Like, okay, this guy's pretty bad, but this guy's worse, so let's get this guy. So we have sort of the same situation here. Although I don't think that Kishida-san's doing such a bad job, but he's not doing a great job, and that's what we need. Yeah, it's safer not to share your political opinions. It's more than just safer. It doesn't make sense, all right? I know, let the political pundits do this, but personally, you don't need, it's like religion. You're not gonna change anybody based on your opinions, and just keep it to yourself. I don't think that and people need to hear your political affiliations. People try to get me. Some people might know, you know, but I don't care. For the president, I elect not a party, I usually elect a leader that can work with people, that might lead. You need a leader. So that's usually my criteria. In terms of political party, I might lean one direction, but I would never, I could go another direction. I'm that 1% that annoys everybody because I'm not any particularly one party, right? Which is good. And I think that that's the way it should be. Politics divides people. Food brings people together. So what we need is more food videos. Food. There's no politics behind, there's probably a way that people find politics behind the food. Like how much it costs and stuff. Kevin writes in here, change the subject please, exclamation point. There you go. All right, thank you so much Kevin for the reminder. I was on my way out. How do we even continue to do this? It's just like, because it's nice to see everybody here. All right, back to work. I have a video to edit, 2 videos that are coming up, one on school uniforms, the other one on gyoza, but I've had to do the school video first because they're gonna have to preview it. I did a factory tour of the school uniforms, so because they have to preview it, I have to get that done ASAP. So that's where I'm going back right now to do that, and then the gyoza video will be maybe tomorrow. It's like 99% done, but it's annoying because I can't focus on that. And then I'll be in Yamagata the day after tomorrow. So hopefully we have some autumn colors there. I'm gonna take you to Yamadera. If you guys are in Yamadera, if you guys are going up to Yamagata, you can catch me at Yamadera on the 16th. I shouldn't say that, but I'll be up there filming the autumn colors. So until then, have a good day. Thanks guys for the support, and I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy the Sumida River for the next couple of seconds with the sky tree just hidden behind that apartment building, and Eitaibashi, which was made from steel, which was supposed to be used in battleships in the 1930s, but they decided to build a bridge that would be impenetrable to earthquakes, which is pretty much true. You can see some World War II damage on the top of it as well, as the bombs hit the top and dented some of it. Interesting stuff. Mata ne.